My name is Mike. I'm a professor for social management, and you are listening to Managing Around, the podcast about social sciencing and magic managing.
Hello, and welcome to Managing Around, the bi-weekly podcast about social science, culture, and management. Recently, I came across a very short, reasonably cheap, and fairly interesting book on solidarity by Heinz Bude, while my preparations for social policy lectures at my uni. And I was shocked how little I could remember. It is so obvious. Most of us would agree with the fact that all societies need to be built on the principle of solidarity. But actually, what solidary behaviour, a community of solidarity is, and who bears joint liability in a society, was not clear to me. If you want to hear about some of the insights I gained, then stay tuned. Today's episode deals with the very question of what solidarity is and a community of solidarity consists of. In the preparation to my social policy lecture in our study program Social Pedagogy and Management, which deals with the fundamentals and principles of the welfare state, I read with great interest the book titled Solidarity, the Future of a Great Idea, written by the German sociologist Heinz Bude, who currently teaches as a professor for Macrosociology at the University of Kassel. And in doing that, I remembered a song from my favorite band Tocotronics, which I would like to start with today. If you don't know this band, Tocotronic is a German rock band founded in 1993. Similar to Blumfeld or Die Sterne, they are considered a part of the Hamburg School music movement. The song is called Solidarität, which is German for solidarity, and comes from the Red album. As I cannot play the tune, I will recite a passage from the song. Solidarity. You who are undaunted, plagued with content, hunted every day from your traumas, you who need any help, running the gauntlet among Philistines, driven by the herd, confronted with their grimaces, you who don't know what to do next and missed any love and affection, you who are about to be demolished, you have my solidarity. I know you need a shield, because I also know your fears, driven by the herd, confronted with crazy grimaces. When I don't know what to do next, and I tear myself to shreds, when confusion blows around me, I have your solidarity. When you don't know what to do next, and missed any love and affection, when you're about to be demolished, you have my solidarity. The Red album is a concept album that deals with the topic love. Additionally, the color of the cover reminds us of a socialist symbolics, which can be understood as a political contrast to the more personal topic of the album. Tocotronic is known for their left-wing political attitude, and also this song, Solidarity, recalls the working class movements. In my view, the basic message to us is this: even in your darkest days, when you feel lost, missing any love and affection, we have our solidarity. With other words, this is an unconditional support in a situation when you cannot get on your feet again, and with your own power. If someone is being confronted with an emergency situation, we recognize ourselves as human beings in the other. Only in the free decision for humanity, we will find us together as a society. Of course, this is a very philosophical interpretation of the song, but if you have any other thought, please let me know your comments in your favorite podcast app. And this leads us to the topic of today's episode, in which we will explore the very concept of solidarity, and we will also reflect on the mentioned book. In Heinz Bude's book, Solidarity, the Future of a Great Idea, the author shows quite plainly that there is no moral obligation to solidarity or solidary behavior. Although solidarity has always been beneficial for a peaceful coexistence in all societies. And there is no innate trait in the human nature, although most human beings have some skills which we would call empathy or the competence to change perspectives. I will follow the footsteps of some of the book's arguments and reflect on the pandemic-induced developments that are currently happening in our society. Firstly, the book starts with a thought experiment and the imagination of the opposite position, the free rider's innocence. The opposite of people showing solidarity are the free riders, who watch, criticize, and only take the best out of a situation for themselves. In a certain way, we are all free riders on collective goods are freely accessible to everyone. For example, most parts of the internet or Wikipedia, a basic income and things like that. But even those who are neither committed to the preservation of these public or collective goods nor pay anything for them can enjoy them. Such collective goods are increasingly taken for granted. People often tend not to appreciate such goods, but rather ask themselves what the benefits are to advocate for solidarity. The motivation is rather low, because you invest something yourself from which others who do not contribute benefit greatly. You grow into this behavior because of the fear of being fooled. Secondly, solidarity has always been a scary big idea. Heinz Bude says in the book, and I quote from page 22, "Solidarity touches my understanding of belonging and connectedness, my willingness to face the needs and sufferings of my fellow human beings, and my feeling of responsibility and concern for the whole. Without solidarity are those who only believe in themselves, who leave others to their fate, and solidarity is a foreign word for those people who are indifferent to the state of the community." End of quote. This is the definition that Bude gives us. It shows that solidarity has a lot to do with empathy and the interest of the community's good and the greater good. This overall responsibility is not new, but probably existed already in written records in the Roman Empire. The Romans had a word for this, in solium, which means all for one, one for all. By and large, the concept of solidarity was intensively discussed as a principle of the social existence in the 18th and 19th century, which specifies a value alongside freedom and equality, two terms that are often associated with it, especially in the French Revolution. Freedom, equality, fraternity. Solidarity coexists with all these ideas. Thirdly, solidarity is a kind of mysterious social bond. The French sociologist Durkheim understood solidarity as a necessity for any cooperation and as the basis for our society. Solidarity is a social bond that connects all people in a society, despite their individual differences. And I quote from the book, page 35 to 36, he calls solidarity based on its similarity a mechanic solidarity, because, in his opinion, it is obviously the simpler principle and he calls solidarity based on the difference organic solidarity, because it forms a complex web of knots and meshes. End of quote. For Durkheim, individuality and solidarity are no opposites, but they enable each other. However, he considers solidarity as a phenomenon that changes over time, and it develops even further in societies with an increasing division of labor. Such division of labor, which divides the potentials of individuals, also brings all people in a society closer together, especially in a threat of a war or even in times of a pandemic. It paves way to an equally and mutually shared responsibility in our society. This brings us forth to a conclusion. What learning can be applied to the global situation? This episode touches on the foundations of society and raises the question of what holds a society together. It is even beneath the surface of the COVID-19 crisis and will most likely be the main and central point of our life throughout the next decades. But let us put the pandemic for a short moment aside and dive a bit deeper into what is happening around us and what is somehow overlooked. What we can see in our world today is an expansion of the idea of solidarity. In times of uncertainty and change, a majority of people tend to develop strange behavior between powerlessness, helplessness, and swoon, while being overwhelmed by the crisis and in their quest for safer places in non-risky areas of our life. What emerges, at least in Western societies, is a greater sense of solidarity. People altruistically support each other in everyday tasks. People mostly obey the state and follow the strict rules and regulations that sometimes change on a daily basis. Despite few protests and various anti-movements, people mainly rely on this sovereign power. But the question in this context remains, why do they do that? I would think, and with this I am in line with Heinz Bude, what could be the firm ground of our society is our sense of Gemeinschaftssinn, which is the German word for a sense of community, and the mutual independence and faith between people. I think we can call this phenomenon for the time being solidarity. Nevertheless, we have to explore other aspects in future episodes. If you want to learn more and don't fear to read German, a helpful reference for this topic is the book from Heinz Bude, 2019, Solidarität, die Zukunft einer großen Idee, published in Karl Hanser Verlag in Munich. Alright, that's it for today, dear listeners. I truly appreciate all your efforts to tune in my podcast for this episode. Please, if you liked this episode, don't forget subscribing to the podcast channel in your favorite podcast app, so you can stay up to date whenever a brand new episode of Managing Around is released. Stay safe, and we will see us on the next episode.
If you liked this episode, please leave a review on the Apple's podcast website. If you are not using an iPhone, there's a link in the show notes. If you've got any ideas or thoughts on this episode, or if you've got an idea about new podcast topics or questions you'd like to discuss, send an audio file or voice note to hi@profmanagement.de. For any non-audio comments, drop a tweet or a DM to @profmanagement on Twitter, please. Thank you for listening and see you next time.